Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got my friend David Mathews of David Mathews Outfitters on the line. David, how you doing?
Good, Jay. It's always good to hear from you and chat with you.
Yeah, for sure. We're looking at a March 18th deadline over in New Mexico, and you guide both in Arizona and in New Mexico, so I'm sure you've been fielding quite a few calls for the New Mexico deadline.
Yeah, it's a busy time of year for us. We always get super busy with the New Mexico stuff. Guys applying, recommendations on units, all of that good stuff for about 2 weeks before the draw deadlines.
Now, David, tell us, the listeners who haven't heard you on the podcast before, and I encourage the listeners to go back, find the episodes where David's been on, but tell us a little bit about your experience guiding in New Mexico as far as, is it heavily weighted towards elk, deer, sheep? What's your main primary focus? And talk a little bit about your service there in New Mexico.
Yes, sir. Well, we provide a service for all of the big game species in New Mexico. We tend to take more deer and elk hunters than anything, but we do guide the exotic species, the ibex and aoudad and oryx also. Our elk is primarily on the Gila, units 15, 16D, and 16A. Our deer units are primarily the units surrounding the Jicarilla, the 2A, 2B, 2C, 7, 5B, those units up there.
David, I want to talk, we'll get into it, but I want to talk about your overall feelings about Arizona and New Mexico both, and if it's pretty much the same feeling, you can categorize them like that, but if you've got, ideas in both states and maybe how they differ, but just going into this draw period, obviously the Arizona elk and antelope applications, the draw was just completed, and that everyone's card got hit, and then we just found out on Friday what everybody actually got. But as far as moisture goes, we're looking at Arizona deer and sheep applications due here in June, and obviously we're staring right in the middle of New Mexico's application on the 18th. What is your condition outlook for vegetation and antler growth and overall moisture and how things are being received out there?
I think this year is pretty similar to what we had last year, moisture wise. I think we're gonna see great antler growth throughout all species across the Southwest again. I think it should be just as good as last year, and God willing, we get a few more spring rains and maybe even a little bit better than last year. That would be awesome.
In regards to the Arizona Strip, and we'll get to New Mexico here in a second, I know you spent a lot of time up on the Arizona Strip and had a really good year last year as far as antler growth. And, for someone that's only been up there 3 or 4 times myself, my question would be, how does that place just continue to kick out the giant deer? And do you feel like with the conditions that we know them as of right now, do you think this next season will be every bit as good as the last?
I honestly do think that this next season will be just as good as last season. I really do up there. It's been, if you keep track of the storms that are hitting and the amount that it's actually dropping, I think we're fairly similar right now to date as what we were looking at last year. I really think, and this is my own opinion, some guys have their own opinion on how we consistently kill big deer up there, and I really think that my honest opinion is I think that trail cameras do help. I think that some deer are living to an age where they get to reach, maybe not their max potential, but, actually reach a potential that guys are getting to past deer that they wouldn't have shot in the past because they have knowledge of a better deer in the area.
So you actually go with it makes total sense. I hadn't really thought of that scenario where, there's been so many people down on trail cameras and this, that, and the other, but you're taking the approach that actually some deer, it saved their lives because of the guides like yourself and others that run cameras up in that country. You may have a hunter pass a buck that normally, if you didn't know the inventory and know what was there, you might have that buck shot, whereas you're saying that the cameras actually might be helping some of that longevity and helping some of that age class and bigger bucks. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I really don't know, as far as getting these bucks, into the 7 or 8, range. A lot of the deer aren't making that range anymore, or that age class. But I do think that a lot of bucks are getting to be that 4 or 5 that wouldn't have, just for the simple fact that the guides, like myself and a lot of these great guides that hunt the Arizona Strip, we're actually passing bucks that would have been shot 10 years ago, 15 years ago on this exact hunt, just because we're in there. We have our target buck and we're in there for a specific buck.
Sure, makes sense. As we shift over into New Mexico, I believe you really got going over in New Mexico, working with Marvin James, who has passed away. Talk a little bit about that relationship and how you kind of got started running around with Marvin and doing a lot of those hunts, because I knew he used to be real heavy in New Mexico.
Yeah, Marvin was big in New Mexico. He did his fair share in Arizona also, but he really helped New Mexico. I think he was a big part of the platform of trophy game in New Mexico. I think that he came in with the knowledge of trophy hunting, or with a desire of trophy hunting, and came into New Mexico and started trying to actually kill the quality of animals that New Mexico is being better known for now. I think that he was a big part in letting guys know out there that New Mexico does have trophy potential in some of these units, and as far as guys that haven't been applying forever, I think it's awesome, just for the simple fact that there's no preference points. Guys that haven't been applying, they can apply, and they have the same chance at drawing these trophy hunts as you or I.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one thing when we're sitting here talking about New Mexico, that everybody's on a level playing field, and the reality is you could draw multiple tags, and you could hit a dry spell and not draw for 10 years, but you could draw back to back, or you could draw very close. So I mean, with all of the species, it's one of those things that if you're not applying in New Mexico, in my mind, it's crazy, because you have just as good a chance as anyone to draw.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about, I know you love elk, but you really, really love your deer. Let's start with deer first, actually, in New Mexico. Okay. You mentioned some of the units around the Jicarilla. I believe there's some changes in some season dates and different things in some of the twos and whatnot. Talk about the deer hunting and maybe go through some of the units that you like.
Okay, well, I like I said, I do like all those units around the Jicarilla, the 2A, 2B, 2C, 5B7. I think that this year, as far as the late hunts go, they're later dates than they normally are, just for the simple fact that New Mexico seasons primarily start on a Saturday. So the first Saturday of November is actually November 7th. So that pushes all the dates back on those deer hunts. So the 2C hunt, when it could have, on some years it could have a November 9th or November 8th. It could have a start date. This year it actually starts on the 14th. So it just pushes those hunts back closer to the rut, and that's a big one, is that 2C hunt. The 2B hunt, you you don't generally see any rut. But like I said, that 2B hunt is a migratory hunt. So you're actually pushing it further into the early migration or mid migration for that hunt. So you'll see more deer numbers. The quality bucks could be there by then. It's one of those things where the actual dates push it later into the season, which make it awesome. So.
And when you say that that's a migratory hunt, I assume those deer are coming off. Where are they coming from?
Yeah, those deer in 2B, they come out of southern Colorado, and and then you get a good portion of deer that actually migrate off the Hickory Indian Reservation. So I
mean, there's a chance for a bomber buck to slip through there with those later dates. I mean, do you think the 14th? How late does it go? So it starts on the 14th.
Okay. So the 2B hunt is actually the week before, so it starts on the 7th.
Okay.
So yeah, the 2C hunt is the only one that starts on the 14th, but the 2B hunt actually starts on the 7th. So where it could have been a start date of November 2nd,
right?
Or the 1st even, if it was a Saturday. But
still, I mean, you get into that first week in November, and if we had cold snaps and snows and pushing those deer and cold enough that those deer are up on their feet. I mean, you know how it is.
Yep.
People say, oh, well, temperature doesn't matter. It's the timing and it's the light and it's the photo period. But I've just noticed when you have cold snaps and you have deer on their feet, they seem to, especially when you get around the rut, whether you're talking mule deer or coos deer, whatever. If you've got cold weather, you've got, some snow on the ground, potentially those bucks are going to be sniffing around and checking those.
Cruising. They'll be out for the cruise and checking does and checking where they're at, checking progression in estrus, those type of things. So yeah, it's the cruise. We like to see that, and if it's cold weather on those dates and it all falls in line, you could potentially even see that on that hunt. Yes, sir.
I know you've taken the auction hunters and stuff in New Mexico for deer, and New Mexico is just not known for the quality of deer that, say, Arizona has or Colorado has. Can you speak a little bit towards the quality and what maybe holds New Mexico back from having consistent quality across the board?
I don't know what holds them back with consistent quality. I do see, New Mexico, in my opinion, has some of the best genetics as far as frame wise. You actually see it in the record books. Rio Ribra County has just as many record book entries as anywhere in the country, but it's all for the big 4-point frame. I don't think that they necessarily carry a lot of the non-typical genetic, and it seems like in New Mexico, when you do find these really crazy non-typicals, they're just got these little short, squatty frames, so it's rare to find a buck that actually has the frame plus the non-typical, genetic that actually sprouts some of the big non-typical genes in New Mexico.
Some of those mule deer hunts up there in that country, also there's an archery hunt that runs late in the year. I've always heard that one of the big challenges with that hunt is crunchy snow and hard for archers to get around and put stalks on deer without, giving away their position. What are your thoughts on those hunts?
I personally love the hunt just because it's later in the year and you see a lot of deer. You can see some bomber bucks down on the winter range. I mean, as far as the bucks, what's going to be there will be there by then. So you'll have everything that's going to be in the area will be there by then. That are going to migrate into those migration units. The downfall of it is the crunchy snow. If you have the crunchy snow, if the snow is good, it's awesome. You know what I'm saying? And
sure.
And also we've seen, like this year, the first few days of the archery hunt this year, we saw -15, -17 in the morning.
Wow.
Unfortunately, when it gets that chilly, deer movement isn't real optimal in the morning. I think we were seeing a lot of the deer start moving about 10 to 2 on those days that it was really chilly in the morning. So you could have the cold temperature, that restricts the movement in the morning and evening, and the crunchy snow. Those are the only downfalls of that hunt. Other than that, it's an awesome hunt. It's a super fun hunt. You're looking at a lot of deer, looking over, a lot of bucks, trying to choose the right one and actually get after it. So
let's shift focus a little bit over to the exotics, and then we'll finish with elk.
Okay.
Talk about the exotics that you do hunt and some of those hunts.
Okay. Well, we do in New Mexico. We do oryx, which primarily on one of the ranges is a once in a lifetime hunt, or once in a lifetime draw actually. So you draw it, you're done hunting it, and that hunt is a super fun hunt. Oryx are basically a giant antelope. They've got great eyes, and they love to run. So if you're not careful, you could be chasing them long, a long ways. They're fun to hunt. It's pretty high success rate. If you can shoot, it's high success rate. You see a lot of them. It's just trying to choose if you want that, 35 to 37, possibly 40-inch type bull, or if you just want the longer, because the cows are actually horn length-wise longer than the bulls. So that's a fun hunt. We have a lot of fun doing it. We also do ibex. It's down in the Florida mountains. If you haven't heard about it, it is a tough hunt. Physically, it's physically demanding, but it's a lot of fun, man. They're super fun critter to sit back and just watch. They can maneuver through some of the the harshest country that you think is impassable, and all of a sudden, suddenly you just see an ibex just walk across what looks like just a rock face, or run across it and bounce from this rock to that rock, 1,000 vertical feet,
like it's nothing.
Yeah, like it's nothing. They're just cool critters to watch. We also do Barbary sheep down in the southeast corner of the state, and near Texas. They're all free-range Barbary sheep, and I really, as far as a hunt, they're super fun to hunt too. It's not a cakewalk. They're not an easy critter to hunt or even find. You find a few here and there, but finding a good one, could take a few days, but once you have it, you really appreciate the hunt. And most of the country that you're actually in is what they call the poor man's sheep hunt. It really is. It's a true hunt, and it'll physically it'll get to you too.
Before we get into elk, I want to talk a little bit about your optics. I know you spend a lot of time glassing, and curious what you're carrying in your chest pouch, or on your chest, and curious what your kind of go-to everyday putting on a tripod glass is.
Yep, I carry on my chest the 10x50 Swaros. I don't know if I'll ever change that. Those are my go-to. I love them. They're
the EL range, or
no,
ELs.
I'm old school. I've got the SLCs, the 10x50 SLCs.
I had those for years and loved them. They're really, really good.
Yeah, I actually had this year. I had a one of my guys that I take quite frequently. He asked me what I would like, tip wise, and he gave me a set of 10x42 Leica Geovids with rangefinder. I carry those in my backpack, in case we need range on something. But I always have those 1050s on my chest. I generally do my long glass with 15s, and then the evaluation with the 95 millimeter Swaro.
Okay, good stuff. And then, do you do any of the bighorn sheep hunts in New Mexico?
We do bighorn sheep hunts also. It's not every year we get a guy, but I mean we do. We have a bunch of guys apply for it, and if they draw it, then we'll take them. Spend the time down there and glass and try and find the best ram and harvest it. Yes, sir.
All right, and then let's dive into elk. You mentioned the Gila and 16A, 16D. Let's talk about the Gila first, the 15s units.
Okay.
Talk about them.
Okay. Well, I think this year was the first time in a couple years that we'd actually really seen really good antler growth. We were chasing some killer bulls all year. We killed a couple really good bulls. We missed some dandies on some of the hunts this year, but I think this year, looking at the moisture that we've had in those areas, I think that we're on track to have a year like we did last year, where there's plenty of good antler growth out there, and some dense antlers, and to keep them from breaking up too bad. I think we're on schedule to see an awesome antler growth year on the Gila this year also.
What units there? Talk about Unit 15, and then we'll talk about the 16s after that.
Okay, Unit 15 is a lot of guys when they talk historically about the Gila, they automatically think about Unit 15. A lot of guys have hunted it. A lot of guys, have been there hunting with a buddy. Unit 15 is still good. Unit 15 is always going to be good. They do give out a few more tags in that unit over the 16 or the 16D or 16A. That's really the only downfall, but the unit is 3 times larger than 16D and 16A. So I think the extra tags are dispersed pretty evenly. It's got good elk country almost from east to west, north to south. It's killer, so it disperses the hunters, pretty evenly, so you're never really tripping over guys. You might see guys on the road, in the morning before hunts or after hunts in the evening, but rarely run into guys in the field. So Unit 15 is good. It'll always be good. It's really good.
Now, when you were saying you were on some dandies, were you meaning some good ones in 15, or were you saying?
Yeah, we were on a couple good ones in 15. We actually had this year. We had a bull that we thought probably be in that 380 range. That I was chasing around with a guy that we actually missed with a bow at 40 yards. We were chasing him around. By the time the muzzleloader, because we didn't have any of the first muzzleloader season hunters in that unit, but by the time the second season came around, he was off the cows and back in some brush, and we didn't turn him up on that hunt, on the muzzleloader hunt, but we chased him during the archery season all season and actually missed him. Had a great opportunity at him too. So, but yeah. No, there was some really good bulls in 15 that we were chasing around also.
Well, it's good to see what they'll look like this year, huh?
Yeah, hopefully. He'll probably be in the same area. So, we're crossing our fingers hoping. So, yep.
All right, 16A and 16D.
16A and 16D are awesome. We had a big burn in 16D 2 years ago now, so it in my opinion, I think it forced some of the elk out of the unit, just because it burned a good portion of the unit. So they all went south into 16A, and all of those elk were in the north end of the 16A for a year, but they're starting to filter back into that fresh burn, and I think with that fresh burn, I think the sky's the limit really on what could actually grow in that unit this year. I think we'll see some giants grow in 16D this year. 16A, it's just as good as always. It's consistent, really consistent on the quality. It's one of the better units in the state. 16D, 16A, in my opinion, they kind of flip flop on which one's producing the better bulls, and for a few years here in the last couple of years, 16A has produced some better bulls, but I really think this year, I think we're going to see some really big bulls in 16D.
Now, you're talking archery and firearm season, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, archery and firearm. Yep.
And didn't they bump the dates of the firearm season back, and do you think that's going to make that hunt quite a bit tougher, and do you think it's going to actually save some bulls' lives?
Well, my opinion on that hunt is, every single year, I think I've been over there, for going on 20 years, and every single year, I think I've only seen it maybe 2 or 3 times in the amount of time that I've spent over there where you actually go into that firearm season, the general firearm season, with the elk just rutting their guts out still. So most of the time the elk are primarily done, with the rut. And a lot of the bulls, you could catch them on that first rifle season in what I call the cool down, where they pull off the cows and they go find a deep dark canyon and they don't move. They sit in one spot and basically eat as much as they can and close to water and drink what they can, and they're not real visible on the feed yet. So I think honestly, in my opinion, if it's an average year, I think the bulls are going to be past that cool down stage, and you're going to catch them on the brushy, in the brushy canyons and that type of stuff for that hunt. So I think it's going to be good in my opinion, just because you're going to have
they'll be settled down a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be settled down out of the rut, and they'll be cooled down, and they'll be on the food real heavy, and that'll be the only thing that's on their mind, trying to fatten up, after the rut.
So, in other words, if you know where to go and you know where to look, it's probably going to make that hunt better.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you know where to go and you know where to look and you know where the bulls like to winter and you know where the bulls like to hang out, post rut, I think it's going to be good. I think, like I said, I think the bulls they're going to be on the food, and they're going to be hungry, and they'll be feeding, really well in the morning and evening, and which will make it a better hunt. You'll be able to look at more bulls and pick out the bull you want and know that he's not going to move very far, when you actually go in after him to kill him. So.
David, I want to take a quick second here. I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I also want to thank the listeners for their avid support of this podcast. Guys, with the sponsors that I have of this podcast, it allows me to put the time into it that I do. I want to thank GoHunt.com, Cody Nelson, my friend of 20-plus years. I call him the glassing guru. He's the optics authority. He's the manager over there at the Go Hunt Gear Shop. If you have any optical needs at all, you can give him a call at 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. You can also send him an email at optics@gohunt.com, or you can text or call him on his cell phone, 602-399-3699. I also want to thank Go Hunt Insider and remind you guys it's application season. If you're looking for the best, up-to-date, most accurate draw odds, you can go to gohunt.com/JScott, follow the prompt. You're going to automatically get a $50 Go Hunt gift card to the gear shop. I want to thank them for their sponsorship. I want to thank KUIU Ultralight Hunting. You can find out more by going to the KUIU website. That's KUIU.com. That's KUIU.com, KUIU.com. That's all the ultralight gear that I wear on all of my hunts and have since 2010. Phonescope.com. Use the JScott20 promo code to get a 10% off discount there at Phonescope. OnXMaps.com. Use the JScott20 promo code to get a 20% discount on all orders. And then Apex Ammunition. Go to Apex Munition. That's APEX munition.com. David, I want to ask you a question about trail cameras, and I've talked to you before about this. I'm just curious if there's any new models that you're really liking, any upgrades, anything new that you're using in your trail cameras.
Man, I haven't really switched it up yet. I mean, I've tried some of the newer models, but I still really think, the G34, the 4K Stealth, those are my go-to right now. They take great pictures. Battery life is good. that's my go-to right now. And until they maybe change it up and come out with something drastic, maybe they'll make a camera that takes just as good of pictures and batteries last for 2 years. I don't know. It's going to be hard to beat those.
You know, if you're on the OT6, we run the same thing, the G34 Pro and the 4Ks, and I don't know if you're anything like me. I almost get to where I just want to check the videos, and I don't like looking at pictures near as much as videos. Are you the same way?
Yeah, no, I love watching the videos. You pretty much know once you've watched the videos what pictures you have, you know. But I really the video is unreal. I mean, you really sit back and watch it, and it's how it can be so clear at night is crazy to me. I love it. You know, it's one thing that I really love to do. You know, whether it was, you know, scouting for a hunt or not, I really love just checking cameras and getting cool pictures.
And you're one of the, I mean, you have cameras running lots of times 365. I mean, just all over different states, just constantly running, right?
Yes, sir. I've got a lot of cameras in right now, but I still have a lot of cameras out. So, yeah, I love running cameras all year round to just catch. And it may not even be the biggest animals that you're catching on camera. Maybe you catch something cool, you know. Who knows what it might be? A bobcat carrying a rabbit in its mouth, you know, things like that. I love stuff like that. So,
I mean, it keeps you energized when you're just checking, you know, camera after camera after camera, for sure.
Yes, sir.
Talk a little bit about a couple of things that you see when you're out checking your cameras, maybe some things that you've learned that maybe other people don't know and hanging cameras. You know, are there any specific things that you see like, man, that guy's camera's facing the wrong way, or it's, you know, it's at the wrong angle, or it's the wrong height? What kind of tell us a little bit about maybe some tips that you have for hanging cameras for successful, and maybe it might be different for elk or deer.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are some tips that I have that are things that I try and do, you know, and keep in mind when I'm hanging cameras, or, you know, and a lot of the stuff is, you know, I always try and have the camera, if I can, pointed north. You know, if it's pointed east or west or even south, it seems like, you know, during prime time in the evening, you know, in the daylight still or morning, it seems like you could catch sun glare and it could glare, you know, wash your picture completely out. So I try and keep the camera pointed north as much as possible. It you know, it keeps the glare off of, you know, the sunrise or sunset or midday sun. It keeps that glare down to a minimum. You know, I think placement as far as height-wise, when you're placing for elk or deer, you know, be mindful of the animal size that you're actually placing the camera for. A lot of times guys will place a deer camera a little bit too high and you miss, you know, the deer's legs. All you're catching are deer bodies and deer heads. You know, I think it's cool to actually have the entire critter in the camera, you know. With that being said, I do have some Coues deer salt licks that have elk come in to the salt lick, and it seems like, you know, if the elk's head's up, you don't catch anything but body. Yeah. So it's kind of a bummer both ways. But if you have Coues deer sets, you know, and they're 4 Coues deer, then you can't be too bummed when an elk walks in and all you catch are brow tines, and you're like, oh man, that thing could be giant. You know, your mind builds it to anything.
Oh, for sure. And then you get like the next video, and it's like a 5x6, and you're like, gosh, he looked big.
Yeah, exactly. So just be mindful on height, you know, the height that you're either setting on trees or posts for the animal that you're actually setting, you know. Those I really enjoy having pictures where you can see the entire animal, you know, from hoof to tip of horn, you know. So
what about as far as trail coming in? If, you know, let's just say, using a clock, you had a trail coming in at, you know, from 2 o'clock, you know, angling down to, say, you know, 7 o'clock or something at that angle. How would you orient your camera to catch that path, you know, of progress coming in? Are you going to do perpendicular? Are you going to do more have them coming right at you and going away? What's your strategy there?
I like to do perpendicular, just because the broadside is cool. You get the broadside of the animal actually walking by. With that being said, don't set it directly on the trail, especially a lot of these new cameras. It seems like if they're set too close, you're gonna miss what you want to see. So set it back a ways. A lot of these cameras, new sensors are awesome. They're gonna trigger at 50 feet or 60 feet. So set it back. A lot of these cameras are super, the quality of them are awesome also. So you don't really have to worry about, something walking by too far away and taking a picture and not being able to zoom in and actually tell what it is. So on trails and things like that, I'll generally set back, I'll set back, anywhere from 40 to 60 feet, on a trail and go from there, and have them walking by on the full broadside shot. So.
Good stuff, man. Well, thanks for sharing with us today. I want to give you a chance to let people know how they can reach out to talk to you. I know we've got this March 18th deadline coming up in New Mexico, so if you would, let people know how they can find you.
Yes, yeah. You guys can either email me at dmoutfitters@hotmail.com or call me directly, 928-300-6405. And even if you have questions about it, you guys don't want to apply in the Outfitters draw, give me a call. I love talking hunting. Let's talk some hunting.
Right on, buddy. Thanks so much for sharing with us, David. God bless, and I'll see you down the road. Be safe.
All right. Thank you, Jay.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye.